Good morning, Shilpa. How are you?
Evening. I'm doing really well. How are you, Richard?
I'm so good, and we're so excited to welcome Shilpa to the show today.
Uh,
Thank you for taking the time to, first of all, to reach out to us and to meet with
sure.
us and to
Yeah.
do the pre-planning and make sure that this is going to be an amazing conversation. So, thanks for all of your investment in this.
Oh my gosh, thank you for having me. I'm super excited to chat. And I think when we had our pre-conversation, I loved the energy that you had. So I feel like this is gonna be a fun
It's
conversation.
going to be a fun conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I love that you're in Chicago because I think you and I talked. Chicago is one of my most favorite cities. And in a little ways, like the last 16 months, it had been like a second home because I was working for a company out there. So
Yeah.
spent a bunch of time there. You and I were talking restaurant scenes, we were
Oh my
talking
gosh.
neighborhoods, we were talking all that good stuff.
I'm such a foodie. So
Yeah.
it's a great city for me.
Well, and we're all heading, here in the Northeast too, we're all heading into like the best parts of the year, right? So yeah.
100%. I
Yeah.
can't even tell you. I think like the last 2 days we've had 70, 80-degree days. And for the month of May, that's, very unusual. And so
Yeah.
everyone's been out in their shorts and t-shirts.
Yeah.
And it's like,
Well, that's crazy.
like,
Yeah.
yep,
So
Chicago
here's
is
my
telling you.
here's the most important and first question for you. Are you going to Lollapalooza this year?
Oh, I'm not. I think I very much like admire Lollapalooza, but I'm probably like past that stage, I think a little bit.
I have unequivocally outgrown Lollapalooza.
Yeah, exactly. But hey, like I watch the influx of people come into the city. I'm like, more power to you. But yeah, I'm a listen to the music that will reverberate off of the speakers in my apartment. So
So I'll tell you two quick stories. So one is my daughter and I watched the Lollapalooza live stream last summer from the comfort of my air conditioned home. So that was awesome, right?
yep, great choice.
And I realized that I'm too old for concerts now when I went to see Jack White and the White Stripes at Fenway Park in Boston.
Okay.
And they did an amazing show. And I was like annoyed at how noisy the crowd was. I was like, can the crowd please quiet down
Oh my God. You know what? That's the
so I
thing.
can better hear the music?
Right. So it's funny because I'm actually heading to a concert for a Punjabi Indian artist tomorrow,
Ooh,
and it's the first
exciting.
time that I've seen him in concert. So his name is Diljit Dosanjh.
Okay.
He's pretty popular with the Indian and Punjabi crowd,
Mm,
and so I'm going. And this is my first concert. Gosh, I think in like 4 or 5 years since
mm.
the pandemic, probably. Like I haven't gone, and I'm exactly in your boat where I'm like, okay, what is the decibel level that I think I'll be able to stand comfortably? Do I need earplugs? Like, who knows? But he's an amazing artist, and I'm
Oh,
excited
that
to
sounds
see it.
wonderful. So, a very close friend of mine that lives in Chicago runs a dance troupe tutorial company called Shakira Queen Beats. I don't know if you've ever heard of them, but if you ever want to put your dance attire on and take a class, I'll make sure to connect you guys.
Oh my gosh, I would love that. You know what's
Yeah.
funny is that I have actually been taking up dancing a little bit more as
Oh,
I try to
cool.
find more balance in my career. And
Yeah.
so I've just been renting out a studio every
Oh,
day
it's
and just
amazing.
choreographing. So yes, I will
That's
totally
awesome.
take you up on
She
that.
does an amazing mixture of like hip hop and traditional Indian dance, and it's a great. Her classes look
Oh,
like
nice.
an absolute ball, like just the
Oh,
best time.
amazing.
Yeah, absolutely, so cool.
You and I will exchange notes
We'll do.
after
Okay, we're gonna do
this.
that.
Yeah.
Shelby, you have a very impressive career in brand marketing,
Oh,
kind of classical, CPG companies, consumer product companies.
yeah.
You've worked across startups, but obviously this didn't happen overnight. I'm sure there were many major moments or turning points in your career that kind of shaped your approach, shaped your decision, first of all, to begin See Good Strategy.
Yeah.
Talk to us a little bit about your background and your career journey up until this point, Shilpa.
Oh, yeah. It's been such a, whirlwind, I think sometimes. And my career actually first started in corporate finance prior to
Mm,
business school. And I always, I try to give that perspective sometimes to folks because I think, you know, it's a big part of my life that shaped the way I thought about business,
Hmm.
and how I thought about marketing or how I
Mhm.
approached marketing, because I had to start by owning a P&L very early in my career.
Right.
And then when I went into brand management, really I sought out brand management because I've always loved the arts and humanities side of the house. That's been my first love,
That's my heart too.
honestly. Exactly. It's just, I think of myself very much in the artistic world, and I was really missing the creativity side of my life when I was only in
Interesting.
finance. So
Sure.
brand really helped me balance that, the business acumen with the creativity, because you own all of the marketing and you get to work with
Right.
creative agencies and you
Right.
get to see these creative masterminds like, work their magic. So I absolutely loved that. I think P&G was a wonderful training ground for me.
Mhm.
It's funny because when you're talking about a little bit of my background, I never thought of myself as an entrepreneur. Never ever. I never thought that I would ever own my own business one
Your own
day.
business. Yeah.
For me, it was like I was too much of a rule follower. Like I was just someone who, like, always was a planner, always was very, like, I guess, pseudo type A.
Right.
And I was just like, I'm good at this. Like, I'm
Right.
good at following directions, and I'm really
Right.
good at exceeding expectations. Like,
So,
this is
like, how
what
am
we
I gonna
do.
be an entrepreneur? Because I gotta break rules and not follow directions or the
Exactly.
directions I'm following are my own.
Right. Well, and
Yeah.
also the thing is the unpredictability that
Yeah.
comes with it.
Oh,
And
sure.
and I was very used to being in a very predictive
Mm.
world. And so Proctor actually, it's funny, my first sit down with my first manager at P&G on Pampers. I still remember this. He was very kind. He was like, "So tell me about your career goals." And I was like, "I really want to build a brand from the ground up." And
Yeah,
he
and he
just
said,
like
"Well, that's
looked
not Pampers."
yeah, and he looked back at me and he goes,
Uh,
"You do realize you're at, like, the biggest brand at, like, the biggest CPG company, right? Like, I don't
in
know
the
how you're
world,
gonna get
in
that
the world,
experience."
like, some of these brands have been in the market for 100
Yeah,
years.
exactly. And so he humored me and he was like, there's this side of the business that, is not really a strategic priority. So
Mhm.
if you wanna work on it on the side, like, feel free, but, like, don't let that be your
Right,
full
right, don't let
gig."
it take over. Sure.
And a year later, that that project became my full-time job, where
Mm.
I basically helped to revive the passion in the pants portfolio. The pants portfolio was basically like potty training pants, swim diapers,
Oh,
and
yeah, sure, sure,
um,
sure, sure. Yeah,
for
every
over 10.
parent's been through that phase. Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. And by the time I was done with that, over a year, we were launching a whole new innovation in the market after 25 years of it being pretty stagnant. We
Hmm.
had a whole new division set up, and now it was called the pants division. So we had dedicated resources to it. It still exists today. And our CEO at the time, AG Lafley, had gone out to the market and saying Pampers Pants was one of his strategic priorities for the
Mm.
business. So it was such a great just acknowledgement
Yeah,
that
it must have been
I
an
had.
amazing feeling. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was like, wow, I could do this, and this was
I
something
was
that was
just gonna ask, was
interesting.
that a little bit of an eye opener or a catalyst or a spark or whatever you wanna call it?
A huge catalyst and
Yeah,
spark, but also, to be very frank, still not thinking about owning my own business. Just
sure.
like, cool that I got to do that, and oh wow, I had an amazing team that I got to work with, and
Right.
how important the right people and the right teams and the right resources are to helping you achieve your objectives. And then honestly through there, like, I went to Braun, also at Procter and Gamble, and then
Oh,
from
yeah.
there I went to the Hershey Company. And I think all of these little steps in my
Yeah.
career, these were still big companies,
Right.
and I was just learning more about my craft. And I
Mhm.
think that's the biggest thing for me has been, um, if I feel like I'm investing in my craft, then I know that I can do anything, and I
Sure.
know that, like, I have that confidence, to kind of back me up. And so, after Kit Kat, I actually, raised my hand. I worked on Kit Kat, at Hershey's. And, after Kit Kat, I raised my hand to work on Bark Thins, and Bark Thins was a
Oh,
newly
yeah, I remember that product. Yeah, yeah. I don't know,
yeah,
is it still around? I remember that product, but I don't know if it's still around.
well, hopefully it's still around. We'll
Yeah,
see. Actually, I think it might be, but it's in probably less distribution than it was when I was
sure,
working on it.
sure.
But
Oh, I didn't mean
uh,
to insult you, by the way, I'm
oh,
sorry.
you're totally fine. No, no, no. It's no insult taken. Don't worry. Like, brands brands come and go, and I think when you're in
Sure,
this business, you'll
sure.
you kind of get used to that. But it was one of my favorite brands,
Yeah.
honestly. Like we called it snacking chocolate. I
Mm.
ate so many bags of it
Oh
at
my
my
god.
house.
Yeah, how do you not, right? I mean,
We would call it like the Hershey 15 because you would walk into work and there would be
like the
like
freshman 15, right?
bowls.
Yeah, yeah.
Exactly, exactly. But really, like that gave me the opportunity to work with some of the legacy team members who came with
Okay.
the acquisition of Bark Thens to the Hershey Company.
Mm,
And myself, along with my manager and my leadership, we were trying to create what was called, at least at that time, the Emerging Brands Division.
mhm,
And so that gave me a really good look into startup life. And
mm.
I absolutely loved like being able to be scrappy and test the
Yeah,
boundaries. And I loved
yeah.
taking a little bit of risk, like smart
You had
risk.
some sa you had still had the safety of where you
Right.
were as an organization, right?
Right, exactly,
Mhm,
and these are stepping stones, and I think it
mhm,
just for me and my personality, there are some personalities who can just go out there and start their own business from
mhm.
day one, and I highly, like, respect that. I was not one of those people, so I think I needed one of those, like, those stepping stones to kinda show me along the way that I was able to do that.
Right.
And then honestly, from the Hershey experience, I went into the startup world. I just dove straight in.
Nice.
And since then, I had a number of just different roles, whether it was working with family owned organizations or with
Mhm.
startups, that just got me very comfortable
Yeah,
with pioneering different routes to approach problems or
sure.
just really having to do multiple jobs at one time.
Mhm. Sure.
And I
In the
think
startup world, it's pretty much a necessity, right?
exactly, yeah,
Yeah,
you have to wear multiple hats,
yeah.
and so I think, there's been times where I've tested, entrepreneurship in some ways, and I just didn't realize I was doing that, so, one of those examples is while I was at P&G, I just opened up a side business helping medical students write their own personal statements for residency
Oh,
because I love
interesting.
writing.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, and it was just, my sister and my brother-in-law are both in the medical field, and I've always just helped them with, like, their writing and their essays, and I had just kinda started that on the side, and it was something small, but, only, like, through thinking about it, I was like, "Oh, I did kinda test that little boundary a little bit," and then, through my career, it was, like, going into freelancing for a little bit when I was between jobs, I was just starting to consult and just freelance a little bit, and that also was a test in the waters, and so I
Sure.
think See Good Strategy Group, it was a very intentional move, and it was something where I thought about for a long time, and I knew, I felt like I was ready for it. So
Sure.
I think that was the balance of having the network, having the craft, spending time in kind of adjusting the craft and refining it, and then just hopefully having the courage to
Do
go
it.
out there and do it.
Yeah. I'm smiling because from many reasons, because I love your story, but also someone who's very close to me just asked for my help in writing their uh, medical school application personal statement. It's
Oh,
so funny.
nice.
What a crazy,
See,
crazy coincidence. Yeah,
we're
crazy
we're
coincidence.
literally in the same
Yeah,
wavelengths.
yeah, so crazy. And it's also I found it interesting when you were talking to, and I thought about this a little bit, but I think I was thinking about it more when you were speaking. The idea of like and sometimes in people's minds, like business owner and entrepreneur
Yeah.
are not synonymous,
Yeah.
right? We think of like,
Yeah.
oh, a business owner, that's like someone who owns a dry cleaning business or, in this SMB space, right?
Right.
Or
Yeah.
that's, somebody who maybe, is whatever, like yeah. Or there's like the business owners like the Hershey company, right? Like
Mhm.
and there's such a crazy dichotomy between the two. Like where do
Yeah.
you find your way and fit into that,
The
right?
yeah,
Yeah.
it's so interesting that you say it that way, and I also resonate with that. I think for a lot of folks, they think about it in 2 different ways, but when you really, like, strip back all of the layers, it's the same thing. It's
Right.
the
Yeah,
same mindset, you
sure.
have to show up every day dedicated. You have
Mhm.
to show up with courage. You have to like brave all of the completely like unexplained, unplanned things that
They're
happen
gonna happen inevitably.
inevitably, and so you have to be extremely agile. But and also and I used to hear this a lot from entrepreneurs and they would, or even just startup founders, and they'd be like, I'm kind of winging it, I'm just like
Right.
I'm just taking it day by day, and I'm figuring it out as I go. And one of my managers back in like big CPG world likes to always say we're building the plane as we're flying it, and
Right.
it was always like the colloquialism that they would
Yeah.
use.
Yeah.
Um, and I thought, okay, if I ever own my own business, I'm the kind of person who's a planner. I have a
Yep.
vision. I know exactly what
Yep.
I want, and I'll figure out my way to get there. And that's just me. And it's so funny because a year and a half into it, and I'm like, yeah, man, I'm just
Yep.
kind of like
You're
going
winging
by
it.
day by day. Like we're just figuring it out as we go. And so
One of the entrepreneurs that's more in the Gen Z generation that I spoke with said, I asked her a similar question, and she said, I'm just vibing.
yeah,
And I was
I
like,
love that.
that's the best answer ever.
I love that. I'm just vibing. I gotta
I'm
adopt
just
that, man. I'm stealing that from her. She's okay.
So,
That's
but
great.
let's talk a little bit about See Good Strategy Group. That's
Yeah,
SEE, See Good Strategy Group. Tell us a
yeah.
little bit about what it means to be purpose driven and sort of the kind of very unique approach that your organization takes in the work that it does.
Oh, thank you. I love that question. So, as a brand builder, I really was very intentional about how I wanted to name the company.
Mm.
Um, I knew, kind of just taking a quick step back for a second, after working on various brands, which were all amazing experiences, I felt that I really wanted to use my craft in a way where I was very, proud to put my name behind what I was working on for future generations. Like that was just
Mhm.
something that I felt I wanted to be aligned with my values. I wanted to do more mission driven brand work. And after my most recent experience being the VP of brand marketing at Cosmic Bliss, which is an ice cream company that we really rooted in regenerative agriculture, I got to see kind of
Oh,
both
cool.
sides of when we talk about purpose, really, what does it mean to action purpose in an
Sure. Yeah.
organization? And I will always say the Cosmic Bliss team was one of my favorite teams that I got to really work with and see how their minds worked because they stretched the way I thought about
Sure.
business and brand building.
Sure.
So, See Good Strategy Group, the SEE actually stands for Society, Environment, and Economy. So, those are our
Ooh,
three pillars of impact.
I love that.
And See Good, I wanted to name it with some optimism, so I
Yeah.
wanted
See
if
the
you
good.
see
Yeah.
right, and
Yeah.
I think especially with so many things that are going on in today's world, it can get really heavy,
Mm.
and I wanted to make sure that if people could see the good, it's all about perspective, right? If you could see the good, then you can be the good, and then you can do the good, and so I think that's really kind of my train of thought with See Good Strategy Group.
Love it.
What we do is so we do two key sides of the business. It started off first just only as a brand strategy consulting company.
Mhm.
And so what that means is really for those organizations that would like some help in
Mhm.
developing or refining their purpose, their mission, their vision, their values, which are really the foundations of any organization or brand.
Of
We will,
course.
of course, help them with that. We'll help them refine it or create it or develop it.
Right.
But that's really step one.
Mhm.
What we really then focus on is working with the executive teams to say, okay, now that you have that, how are you actually going to operationalize it? So,
Mm.
how does that now permeate through the way you think about your innovation strategy
Sure.
or your human resources and the way that your culture of your organization works, your supply chain? What kind of supply partners are you working with? How about the office space that you're working in if you
Mm.
have one? And of course, marketing is a part of that. But marketing only really comes to, for me, is when your house is in order.
Mhm.
Well, let's try to get the house in order and let's help organizations grow, right? And because, and you ask, what is sort of the unique way that we're approaching it? Um, I talk about this, with my clients a lot. I'm not a career consultant. Not
Right.
nothing against career consultants. I
Sure.
think
Sure.
they're add a lot of
You're great.
value.
Yeah.
But I have owned and operated P&Ls
Mm.
for over
Yeah,
10 years.
back to your finance days. Yep. Yep.
Yeah, and so because even as a brand owner, when you owned the business and you own the business strategy, you understand the dynamics between cross-functional teams. And
Mhm.
you understand, sometimes what you think strategically you want to do in execution, it's very different.
Mhm.
And so I think that's really the nuance in the brain that sometimes, that I can bring to the table is to say, okay, what is realistic here? What do we need to prioritize? How do we need to prioritize it? And when does this all need to happen to help executives move along the stage of growth. And then I'll say the other side of our business. So about a year in, I started realizing like I could help you create all the amazing brand strategies and PowerPoint decks that you want me to do. But to be honest, it's not going to go anywhere if we don't have the right leadership and we don't
Right.
have the right culture.
Right.
And so my thesis began to shift to if we really want to build organizations that are here to change the world, then we have to build leaders who redefine what that world looks like. And that's where, for me, I've always loved teaching. I think part of being able to lead teams, in my career, I've loved the development side of it. Like I
Mhm.
loved seeing how my teams got to reach the next stage of like their own personal growth and like the ahas that they would kind of see in their eyes. So I went into the leadership development side of the house, and that's why we create custom curriculums
Mhm.
for organizations to help upskill their employees across leadership and communication and influence, a lot of different things. So those are two sides of the business, and it's really in the spirit of how do we actually help organizations bring back humanity at the center of how they think about strategy, how they think about their impact on the world, but also how they foster the development of their own employees.
What you just said a moment ago, Shilpa, about how challenging it is for organizations to operationalize these things,
Mhm.
right? We can all sit in a room and we can whiteboard and we can idealize, right, the perfect vision and
Yep.
mission and employee culture and all those wonderful things. But then you spoke for a minute about, the education aspect of it, right?
Mhm.
And it's so true because if the leaders are not, and it but to me, it goes beyond executive leadership down to the extended leadership layer,
100%.
to
Right.
managers, to even individual contributors who can be leaders in their own
Yes.
rights,
100%.
right? As it pertains to culture or as it pertains to brand strategy or this the notion of idea that everybody is the brand and is representative of the brand and
Exactly.
ride for the brand and all of
Right.
that. It's
Yeah.
so hard, right?
It
So I
is
have
hard.
to think that organizations are pretty excited with the approach that you provide.
Appreciate
Any
it.
notable, you don't have to name names, obviously, but
Yeah.
any notable successes that you're really proud of, Shilpa, with organizations you've worked with that
Um,
have just kind of got it?
yeah, so much actually. I think, in my career, obviously, like Cosmic Bliss was
Yeah, they
such an
sound, yeah.
epitome of that. But in the consulting world with See Good, um, one of the organizations that I've worked with is an insurance company,
Mhm,
and they really took the time to go back and evaluate their purpose. And
mhm.
especially with, you start to think about, okay, an insurance company, how can they truly imbibe a purpose that helps
Sure,
improve systemic issues?
sure.
And they really rooted it back into, helping uplift underserved communities. But
Right.
then that also parlays into climate justice work.
Mhm.
And so, part of what I was kind of working on and helping them with was, okay, now that we have this purpose, really, how does that trickle down into the operating companies that
Mm.
ladder up? And
Mhm.
then what strategies can they employ that will not only help grow their products and their innovations and their services, but also solidify their equity in
Yeah,
this work.
yeah.
And a lot of that also, you were just talking about just various different levels of an
Mhm,
organization, all of which are critical, all which are important.
mhm.
And I truly do believe, like, I believe every single person, no matter where you are in the organization, you have so much power.
Right.
You have to understand how to unlock that power. The biggest piece is I used to work at some companies that thought, okay, culture comes from the bottom up. And I have a different belief system because I think culture really flows from the top down. And
Yeah,
I
I see.
think, you have to
Yes.
set
There's
the right
grassroots, don't get me wrong, but it has to
100%.
start at the top. I'm in full agreement with you. Yes.
Right, and
Yep.
so that's where even with this particular, client and this company, what we were trying to do is really help their leaders or executive leaders be thought
Mhm.
leaders in this space so that they model behavior that their teams then can continue to absorb, and they can
Mhm.
continue to live in that same way. So I think if your leader doesn't really model the behavior and the values that your organization talks about, quote
Right.
unquote, um, you can't really expect it to permeate its culture.
Mm, interesting. And you know, we've had inclusive insurance experts and consultants on this
Yeah.
show, and
Yep.
so a lot of what you are saying kind of aligns with our hearts and minds too. So it's very exciting again to be sharing all of this with you today.
Yeah, thanks.
Um, you mentor a lot.
Yeah.
You work with aspiring marketers, entrepreneurs. You have different organizations where you serve on their advisory boards. Very involved. I was specifically interested in the children's project that you're doing. Um, and you can speak about that, please. But
Yeah.
just a little bit about. I'm curious as to how your mentorship and community work just sort of influences your approach to
Yeah.
your own professional life, to your own leadership, Shilpa.
Yeah, it's I think the biggest part for me has always been like, we were talking about this a little bit earlier too. I love I'm a nerd, right? I love school. I always loved
Self-proclaimed
school.
nerd.
School's like I'm a huge nerd. I absolutely I always say if someone could pay me to go to school for the rest of my life, that would be
Oh,
the
yeah,
job.
I'm with you. I'm so jealous of my daughter just graduating college, and I'm
Right.
like, "Dude, if I would never leave college if I didn't have to."
Exactly, right? Like, I soaked it all up,
Yep,
and I think a lot of, the things that I try to focus on, especially outside of my quote unquote day job,
yeah,
have to do with this blend of education, and also blend of things that I am passionate about. So even
mhm,
in the food industry, for
right,
example, and just conscious business. And so each of these organizations that I pair myself with is intentional because A, they reflect my values,
mhm,
and B, I'm always learning
right,
from these organizations to bring back into how I work. So,
mhm.
an example of this, and I will talk about Shanti Bhavan's Children's Project as well,
Please,
but
please do,
an,
yeah.
an example though is also with the B Corp community. So,
Oh, yeah,
I
sure.
am on the executive chair for the B Corp, Be Local Illinois,
Mhm, mhm,
and just being able to support certified B corporations who have really dedicated and promised to use their business as a force for good. If
right,
anyone's not familiar with B Corps, that's really what it's all about.
mhm,
Um, has given me not only like I've met so many amazing, folks in the business community who have the same values alignment, but also gives me an opportunity to understand what are the challenges that they are experiencing and
right,
how can I even craft the services that I offer to continue to help them in those ways. And that's been a huge unlock for me. I grew up a lot in the food industry, obviously with Kit Kat and then Wells Enterprises, and then I was with Cosmic Bliss Ice Cream, and so the food world is also very important to me. And we, talked a little bit about regenerative agriculture.
yeah.
So as I think, and I'm a foodie, we talked about
Right, let's
that.
talk about food and yeah.
Right. So Pilot Light, is a nonprofit that works to advance food education in U.S.
Oh,
school systems.
oh, very cool. So on a nutritional perspective or teaching
Across
kids
the
healthy eat okay,
board.
yeah, that's
So
cool.
they,
Yeah.
what is amazing is they have a fellowship program for teachers across the country where they help the teachers understand how to incorporate in their existing lessons, how
Mm,
to teach their children K through 12 about food. And it can
that's
be
pretty important
not
to
only
yeah. Well
It's hugely important, and we talk about our food system and we talk about in how important it is not only from a climate perspective, but
mhm,
also how important it is, when we think about our own health, when
yeah,
we think about food as healing, we think about
food is
food
medicine, sure,
food as
yeah,
medicine. We
right,
talk about food waste. We talk
mhm,
about food, scarcity. So food deserts. So there's so many elements to that, and also food really brings people together. So
absolutely.
I think it's been such an amazing experience to be a part of that organization and just see the way that they're growing, to help
I love it.
our next generation who are going to be dealing with a lot of the issues that we are, working through right now. In the next 20 years, we have to equip them with
We
with
have
this.
to. We have to. And how smart to incorporate it into their existing curricula, because we know how hard it is for these teachers today, right? I mean, especially now we live in an educational system where there's so much codification to how they have to teach, right?
Exactly. Yep.
And to know then, like, I have to stay within these rubrics or whatever else I need to do. How do I introduce other topics that
Yes.
are, I think it was the late Anthony Bourdain who said something to the effect of like, why every human is not taught the basics of cooking was like beyond him, right?
Yeah.
It's like how does every individual on this planet not at least, and a lot of people,
Right.
and he wasn't referring to like what you learn from your mom or your dad or whoever
Sure.
that person is in your life. He was saying in your, your uh education, in
Yeah.
your primary education, that like how are you not
Yeah.
taught how to feed yourself?
Right. Basic life skills,
Basically.
right? And it's so interesting to me
Yeah.
because, we didn't beyond like, okay, what's a carrot or what's a strawberry? Like we didn't
Right.
really
Or the food pyramid. Everybody learned the
the
food
food
pyramid, right?
pyramid, right?
Right,
Like
yeah,
beyond that, there
right,
really wasn't a lot.
right.
And I think, our what I love about working with this organization with Pilot Light is that they really focus on, okay, let's go beyond that. You want to
Yeah,
talk about food origin? Let's talk about food origin. Let's give cooking classes. And
sure.
it to your point for teachers, it's something that they can incorporate in their existing lessons, but it also increases student engagement.
100% kids love to be hands-on. They love it.
Love to be
Yeah,
hands-on and the creativity that comes
yeah.
with, what
Oh,
can you
yeah.
do with this food? And so, and even trying to solve some more strategic problems. So you link
Mhm.
it with social studies work and you say, okay, like what communities are suffering from food
Yeah.
deserts,
You can probably look outside your window and see a food desert from where you sit, right? I know I
Exactly.
can.
Yeah.
I know I can.
Yeah,
You
100%.
know?
I'm
Yeah,
right in downtown
yeah,
Chicago. So,
right.
it's just been a wonderful organization to be a part of because it marries food with
Andy.
education.
Yeah.
And kind of rounding this out with the Shanti Bhavan Children's Project,
Mm.
what has been so incredibly inspiring to me. So, I'm from Indian descent. My parents, immigrated from India, and I very much, I value my Indian heritage, and it's something
Right,
that's extremely important to
right.
me. One of the things that my parents really instilled in my sister and I was the value of education, and that
Mm,
if we wanted, like, we could do anything we wanted if we really focused and made sure that we got at least the best education that we could possible.
sure.
And unfortunately, and this is not just isolated to India. There's many countries, including our own,
Yeah.
that go through this. But the Shanti Bhavan Children's Project actually affords a free education to children in communities because of the unfortunately the caste system. They're not
Mhm.
usually afforded this
Sure,
type of education. And so they
sure.
provide room and board, a free education K through 12, and they support these children with not only education but a community and a support system that allows them to hopefully flourish in their own ways and give them opportunities that they wouldn't have otherwise gotten. And I think what has really I saw a documentary on Netflix, which really is what kind of got me started in this organization. So it's called Daughters of Destiny.
Oh,
Highly
I think I know
recommend.
this. Yeah, I think I
Oh,
know
have
this
you
one.
seen it?
I think so. I haven't seen it, but I think someone else has spoken to me about it. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
nice. Well,
Yeah.
it will tell you exactly what the Shanti Bhavan Children's Project does, but I got so involved in it mostly because I wanted to figure out like how I could help. Like it was just after seeing
Sure.
that I was like, I need to be able to help these kids
Right.
figure out how to expand their potential, reach their dreams, do whatever like makes their heart sing.
Mm,
And so I've been able to mentor,
I love
a
this.
specific student, and she's just
Oh,
incredible. I learned so much from her. Like
oh,
honestly, I think I've learned way more from her
of
than she's
course,
probably ever
of
learned from
course.
me.
Yeah.
And she's like my little sister, and I absolutely adore her.
Does Shanti Bhavan does it cut across, because India is a huge and diverse, country. Does it try to serve across the entire country? Does it serve certain geographic areas?
So mostly it's located in the south of India. But
Is that
do
where your
believe
family
that
is from?
there. No, my family's
No?
actually from the north of
Oh,
India.
okay, so
So
it's quite
we're
so yeah. I figured it was probably part of your affinity from where your family hails from.
Oh yeah. No,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think just the entire country itself is something that I like
sure.
very much kind of you know I aspire, like, just love and I kind of
Yeah.
belong to, but
It's your identity. Sure.
my
Yeah.
identity
Yeah.
is rooted
Yeah.
into all aspects of Indian
Yeah.
culture. But the school itself right now is very active in the south of India. I do believe that they are expanding. So don't quote me on kind of where their next location is in India, but I think yeah, it's pretty much right now in the south. But I love
That's outstanding. Oh my
the
god,
mission
that's
behind it.
outstanding. I love it. I love it. I love the empowerment that they are trying to produce, right?
Right.
And casting aside the socioeconomic aspects, and that's wonderful. That's fabulous. That
Yeah.
sounds like a fabulous thing to be involved in.
Well, it's also
Um,
just oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, please go. Please, please, please.
No, no, no. I was just gonna say, I think what is also just, sometimes the root of a lot of this is like, how do you expand impact
Yeah.
in the most critical ways? But since so it's sort of like they can only take one child per family,
Mm.
and at sometimes like that's
Oh, wow.
really
How hard is
tough.
that? Yeah. Yeah.
Right, that's very
Yeah.
tough, but I think, in the mindset, it's just we can't serve everyone. If we wanna really
Sure.
spread the
Sure.
impact, we
Yeah.
need to be able to affect as many families as possible, and so what is the power of one person to be able
Mm.
to then, realize these dreams, change their socioeconomic status, and then hopefully help their family and help their communities going back,
Mm.
to kind of lift everybody up and rise everyone up,
Sure.
because they've been able to give that opportunity to them.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I love that. I love those types of stories and the types of organizations that have that kind of commitment, right?
Exactly.
Beautiful, it's beautiful. And I love that you have a mentee, and that's oh, it's so great.
She's awesome. I think I'm her mentee. That's how I look at it.
How old is she?
She is 26.
Okay, okay. So
Yeah.
she's not a she's an adult. Yeah,
She's an
yeah,
adult now.
yeah,
So and
yeah,
so after the high school program, then they, go through college obviously, and a big part of like what I got involved in was okay, the college students that
yeah.
graduate from Shanti
Sure.
Bhavan, there's a lot of life to navigate.
Yeah.
And now they've sort of left this safe haven
Right.
that they've been given since they were a child. And now it's like, okay, you have to really go out into the world and figure out who
What's
you are,
next?
how you're going to
Yeah.
navigate, build your community. And so that's
Yep.
really you know, what I'm trying to help and serve with is like, okay, what comes after this? What comes after
Yeah.
college?
Yeah, yeah, and you can help with that, right? And I'm going to segue a bit because I bet
Mm,
one of the things you talk with her about are the overcoming of challenges and sort of ideas, techniques, approaches. Maybe you just vibe through your challenges. I don't know.
revive, revive. Oh yeah,
Um, how for the young entrepreneurs that are listening to this, Shilpa,
yeah,
challenges, setbacks, they're inevitable, right?
all the
Failures
time,
are inevitable.
all the
People
time.
say, "Oh, you learn from your failures." Talk to us a little bit about some of the things that have maybe come at you. Maybe they surprised you, maybe they didn't. How
Yeah.
did you deal with them, Shilpa?
Oh my gosh, I'm still learning how to deal with a lot a lot of them, but, yeah, and I'll say also this, it's not, isolated to entrepreneurship, right? Like, even in
Sure,
your
it's like life,
career, it's
like
just
your
life,
personal life,
right?
it's everything. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I think one of the biggest unlocks for me that I've been working on over the last year, and I will say this in full transparency, I think being an entrepreneur and
Mm,
starting my own business heightened these challenges and heightened the way that I was dealing with them or I was reacting to them or internally how I managed through setbacks. And it kind of highlighted to me that I probably wasn't doing it in the most healthy way, where I would really like take it upon myself and this personal responsibility if something did not happen the way that I thought it was. And this is again
right,
like, the planner person in me where it's like, okay, if I put in X amount of effort, then
right.
Y is the
Why
result.
am I not getting Y amount of results? Right?
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. And also, working in a corporate environment, usually sometimes it can be, not that it always is, but sometimes it can be a bit formulaic. So you know that if you put these inputs in, you're going to get this type of output. And one of the things that I have really tried to retrain my brain on is detaching myself from the outcome and
Ooh.
saying that my job is to show up every day and do
Mhm,
the best that I possibly can.
mhm.
And if that is having back-to-back meetings, okay. But if
Sure.
that is just having 2 meetings a day and having time to write, which
Mhm.
is also very important to me because I love writing, um, that's okay too. But my job is to show up. And what happens from that is not something that is my responsibility.
Sure.
My responsibility is what I can control, and what I cannot control is not part of that equation. And so I sort of, in that way, it's a little bit of surrendering a little to the universe and saying, okay, here are my intentions and here's what I'm trying to work toward, and I just trust that you will kind of like allow me to be in that
Right.
space. But that doesn't mean that I don't work super hard, and that doesn't mean that I don't show
I
up.
don't doubt that. Yeah.
Right. And so I think when it comes to things that then don't work out the way that I wanted them to, and we call them
Right.
failures, or we call them setbacks, or we call them challenges, um, to me, that mindset has helped me to be not as emotionally reactive in those
Yeah.
situations
That's
and
important.
detach myself.
Yeah, that's important. That detachment is very important for sure.
Yeah. And I think also, for folks who really put a lot of themselves in their work, and that's whether those are founders or entrepreneurs, or
Or just,
people,
yeah, or employees of big companies. Sure.
employees of big companies. um, Sometimes you can attach your self-worth to
Mm.
those outcomes,
Mhm.
and I really have had to learn how not to do that, because
Mm.
it's, just because a client didn't work out the way that I thought it would, or just because I
Yep.
didn't hit, like, a goal of mine that I thought I was going to hit, doesn't mean that I'm less valuable or I'm less worthy. It's like I still have a lot to bring to the table. The
100%.
outputs don't necessarily relate to my own
Right.
self-worth. And so I
Right.
think, again, like, it's a little bit of that detachment, but it's just being able to look at those two things independently and say, wow, I'm just proud of myself for, like, having conversations and showing up versus where that might lead. And the last thing I'll say to this is also, I think if you work at something that you truly are passionate about, and something that you truly care about and align with your values, it's not about that specific outcome. It's about a
Sure.
mindset. And
Sure.
so I'll give a very firm example. See Good Strategy Group is one way that I
Mhm.
try to live out my purpose. There
Mhm.
are other things that I also do. And so if See Good Strategy Group grows, and I hope it does, that's amazing.
Right.
And if it doesn't grow in the way that I thought it was going to grow, and I decide to pivot to something else, that's also
So be
amazing.
it. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but that doesn't change my value, my purpose, or what I bring to the table.
One last thing I'd like to ask you. You mentioned a few minutes ago about your mentee. Again, I'll go back to your mentee.
Sure. Yeah.
And she's graduating and she's navigating the world, and you mentioned something about building her community.
Yeah.
Who's your community, Shilpa?
Oh my gosh. Thank you for asking this. I'm so blessed to have an amazing community of
Mm.
people. And I will also say that the community is ever evolving in different
Mm.
stages of my life.
As
And
it should be, right? Yeah.
as it
Yeah.
should, as
Sure.
it
Yeah.
should.
Yeah.
I've been obviously, blessed with an amazing family that supports, literally. So I don't have a partner or kids yet,
Mhm.
hopefully one day. But right now, it's like my parents and my sister and her family, and to just have that comfort and that support. And they say, you know what, Shilpa, like, I support you in doing what you're doing.
Yep.
Has been such a relief, because I am not taking a traditional path at all.
Yep.
And for immigrant parents, like, I'm sure it causes a bit of
A
heartburn
little
when
bit of
they're
angst, right? A little bit of angst.
like, okay, like, so what do you mean you don't have a 401k? Or like, what do you mean, like, you're not saving anything? Um, so I'm sure that it does cause them angst, but they've never shown that to me. So that's always been like my dad is like my biggest champion, which
Oh, that's awesome.
he's such an amazing girl dad. So, and then honestly, like, the community of friends that I have from all stages of my life, be that my very first friend that I ever made in kindergarten is still one of my very good friends
Oh, that's
today.
beautiful. Love that.
And then, college friends and business school friends who have been fantastic in just
Mm.
helping me navigate sometimes of these mental challenges, but also introducing me to people who can, help me, or just give me perspective where and when it's been helpful and needed. And then finally, I'll just say, like, I think the people that you meet in your life, whether that's through your career or that's through adventures that you go
Mm.
on, everyone adds to it in their own unique ways. And some people are in there for a season, and some people, are in there for a longer period of time. But I've just been so incredibly grateful to have the people that I've met along the way show me, their own magic. So
Right, and show you their love and their support and everything.
100%.
Beautiful. It's
Yeah.
beautiful. Shilpa, the Good Strategy Group is the organization. Thank you so much for reaching out. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
spending some time with us and telling us your story and
Yeah.
all of your wisdom and insights, and keep doing what you're doing, please. It's
Aw,
so
thank you.
important. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Richard. It's been such an absolute blast to be a part of this conversation, and equally championing you, and lucky to be in your orbit.
Oh, thank you. And we will speak again soon. Thank you.
Absolutely.